If you completely crash before your period and your focus issues, impulsivity and overwhelm gets worse, you might be missing something big. The link between PMDD and ADHD is much more common than people think, and it explains a lot. If it feels like every month somebody flips a switch and suddenly everything's too much, that might not be PMS. It could be PMDD. PMDD is a hormone-based mood disorder that causes symptoms such as depression, anxiety, irritability the week before your period. Don't let me forget the extreme mood swings and classic PMDD rage. But people often get PMDD confused with PMS, and although it's an easy way to explain it, I hate it when people say PMDD is a more severe version of PMS, which is, by the way, an understatement because PMDD is like PMS times 10. But there are actually fundamentally different causes because PMDD is actually a brain sensitivity. It's a difference in the way that your brain is wired that makes you more sensitive to the hormone changes during that second phase of your cycle. And we know that hyperactivity isn't always a part of ADHD. In fact, you don't have to be hyperactive at all to have ADHD. You might just have common issues with zoning out, overwhelm and emotional instability. I say just, obviously these are terrible. You might feel like you can never quite keep up. So many women aren't diagnosed with ADHD until adulthood. It's a similar thing with autism. It's always the male symptoms of these things that are well understood. Hormonal changes can have a huge effect on how these symptoms play out, and that isn't something that's well understood at all. So it probably gets misdiagnosed with a lot of other things or ignored as a normal part of being a woman, which is one of my favourite quotes. I've been told it so many times, it lives in my brain. If you have ADHD and you also have PMDD, this can be where it gets really unbearable. If just before your period feels like a total personality shift and your mood drops and your focus drops, it might be more than just the hormones. Studies have shown that ADHD does tend to get worse in the autumn phase of your cycle, also known as your luteal phase, which happens right before your period. And this can worsen symptoms such as focus, mood, and memory. Combine this with PMDD, which is this brain sensitivity to progesterone, also before your period. This can be absolutely devastating. When you move into the second phase of your cycle, your estrogen drops and your progesterone rises. And these hormones have a big impact on dopamine and serotonin, which are key hormones when it comes to ADHD. That's why ADHD symptoms can feel 10 times worse before your period. There's not been anywhere near enough research done on the link with ADHD and hormones and the link between ADHD and PMDD, but from what I can understand, the ADHD symptoms tend to get worse during your period, whereas PMDD symptoms are worse when your progesterone peaks, which is about 10 days before your period. And a lot of women do tend to have both and might still feel like they're really lacking in concentration during their period where the hormones are the lowest. They've shown there's actually subtypes of PMDD. Some women get their symptoms a bit earlier and they drop off as soon as you get your period, you feel 10 times better. And other women tend to still feel bad on their periods. Might help to give you a clue as to whether it's PMDD, ADHD or both. Estrogen really drops to its lowest levels during your period, so you probably won't feel good during your period either, especially for concentration and focus. PMDD symptoms tend to be worse starting 10 to 7 days before your period, which is when your progesterone peaks, because it is the brain sensitivity to progesterone that makes you so irritable and angry. There are different types of PMDD symptoms as well. Some are more linked to serotonin, and those are the depressive symptoms and the feeling really tired and lethargic. And there's the emotional reactivity symptoms that have been directly linked to progesterone. And those are the irritability, the anger, the intense mood shifts, the anxiety. So if you feel fine through most of the month and then feel completely like a different person the week before your period, you're not imagining it. You could actually have PMDD, and it does often overlap with undiagnosed neurodivergence, be that ADHD or autism. It's missed so often because you just get told it's anxiety or depression, or that you're just too emotionally sensitive. But the connection between hormones and neurodivergence isn't taught in medical curriculum, so no wonder it's super hard to get diagnosed, and misdiagnosis is so common. Women get misdiagnosed or ignored or dismissed over and over again. So if you relate to any of this, please drop it in the comments and let me give you some practical things that you can do to help yourself. So number one, and the most important thing, is track your cycle. Try to see whether your ADHD symptoms vary depending on what time of the cycle you're in. So track your mood, focus and energy throughout the month. Maybe speak to your doctor if you feel like your ADHD medication works better or worse at certain times of the month, and ask them to adjust it. Take your cycle tracking, figure out when things are most difficult for you and when things are easier, and plan everything around it. I made a whole other video about this and why it's so important. Planning around my cycle changed my life, especially as someone with PMDD. Also address this with a therapist or a coach who can help you plan around different times of your cycle, especially if you have both ADHD and PMDD. This is vital. If you're someone who feels like you lose control of your brain every month, you're not the only one, and it's not your fault. Your brain is probably just wired differently, making you more sensitive to all these hormonal changes, whether that be ADHD, PMDD, or if you're unlucky to just have the combination of both. Understanding how your symptoms vary across the month could be game-changing for you, because learning to plan around it can be so empowering and stop you from getting overwhelmed and having massive breakdowns. Ever since I started planning my life and my goals around my cycle, I've not had one single breakdown, and I was having them monthly without fail. If this was useful for you, please like and subscribe, and check out my other videos and let me know if you struggle with any of the things mentioned. Track your cycle, plan around your cycle. Take care.